The thunder cracked across the October sky as Sarah Mitchell knelt beside the freshly turned earth in her backyard. Rain mixed with tears on her face as she pressed her palm against the cold, wet soil. 3 feet below lay her golden retriever, Cooper, wrapped in his favorite blue blanket with Mr. Squeaky, the worn rubber ball he had carried everywhere for 8 years, tucked beside him. Her husband, Tom, stood behind her, one hand on their 9-year-old daughter Emma's shoulder. The little girl clutched a handful of wildflowers, petals already wilting in the downpour. Cooper had been more than a pet. He had been Emma's protector since the day they brought her home from the hospital. Every scraped knee, every bad dream, every first day of school fear had been soothed by Cooper's gentle presence. When Emma learned to walk, she had gripped his fur to steady herself. When she cried, he pressed his warm body against hers until the tears stopped. 2 days ago, Tom had found Cooper lying motionless in the garage. No visible injuries, no signs of struggle. The vet said it looked like his heart had simply stopped. At 12 years old, it was not uncommon. But the sudden loss left a hole in their home that no words could fill. Sarah placed a smooth river stone on the grave, one Emma had painted with the words, "Best friend forever." The family stood in silence for several minutes before Tom gently guided them back inside. That night, Emma refused to sleep in her own bed. She lay on the couch, staring at the back door, as if Cooper might somehow walk through it one more time. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Sarah made pancakes nobody wanted to eat. Tom went through the motions of answering work emails. Emma sat at the kitchen table, drawing pictures of Cooper with her crayons. "Can we put flowers on his grave?" Emma asked. "Of course, sweetie," Sarah said, "after breakfast." But when they stepped into the backyard, Sarah stopped so suddenly that Emma bumped into her legs. Tom came up behind them, and the breath caught in his throat. The grave was disturbed. Not just disturbed, torn open. Soil scattered in all directions, the river stone lay 5 feet away, and the hole where Cooper had been buried gaped empty like a dark mouth. "What?" Sarah could not finish the sentence. Tom rushed forward, dropping to his knees at the edge of the hole. He reached down, feeling around in the damp earth. His hand closed on fabric. Blue fabric. Cooper's blanket lay at the bottom of the grave, muddy and torn. But Cooper was gone. And so was Mr. Squeaky. "Maybe an animal dug him up," Tom said, though his voice shook with uncertainty. "A coyote or—" But Sarah was already shaking her head. "Look at the dirt, Tom. Look at the pattern." Tom looked. The soil was not scattered randomly. It was pushed outward from the grave in distinct patterns. Claw marks, dog-sized claw marks, leading away from the hole and across the lawn towards the back fence. "That's impossible," Tom whispered. Emma had not said a word. She stood frozen, staring at the empty grave. Then, so quietly they almost missed it, she said, "Cooper came back." Sarah wanted to tell her daughter that was impossible, that Cooper was dead, that they had checked, the vet had confirmed it, there was no heartbeat, no breath, nothing. But the evidence before them told a different story. "We need to call someone," Tom said. "Animal control, the police, someone." Sarah pulled out her phone, but her hands trembled so badly she could barely hold it. She dialed the non-emergency police line and tried to explain what they had found. The dispatcher sounded skeptical, but promised to send an officer. While they waited, Tom walked the perimeter of the yard, following the disturbed soil. The trail led to the back fence, where several boards had been knocked loose. On the other side, in the neighbor's yard, he found more signs. Paw prints in the mud. Large ones. Cooper-sized. Officer Rodriguez arrived 20 minutes later. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes who listened patiently to their story. He examined the grave, took photos, and walked the same path Tom had followed. "I've seen a lot of strange things in 20 years on the force," Rodriguez said finally. but I've never seen anything quite like this." "What do we do?" Sarah asked. "I'll file a report," Rodriguez said, "and I'll alert animal control to be on the lookout for a golden retriever. But Mrs. Mitchell, I have to be honest with you. If your dog was dead when you buried him, there's no scientific explanation for this. If he wasn't dead, if he was in some kind of coma or deep sedation, and he woke up underground—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "That would be extraordinarily traumatic. He'd be frightened, disoriented, possibly injured from digging his way out." "But he'd be alive," Emma said, speaking for the first time since they discovered the empty grave. Rodriguez looked at the little girl and nodded slowly. "Yes, he'd be alive." "Then we have to find him," Emma said. For the next 2 days, the Mitchell family searched. They drove through every neighborhood within 5 miles. They posted flyers on every telephone pole and bulletin board. They called every shelter, every vet clinic, every animal rescue organization in 3 counties. Sarah's hands shook as she stapled another flyer to a wooden post outside the grocery store. The photo showed Cooper at his happiest, tongue lolling, eyes bright with joy. The word "missing" screamed in red letters above his picture. Below, in smaller type, "Last seen at Riverside Heights, answers to Cooper, may be disoriented or injured. Please call if seen." Her phone rang constantly those first days. Each time her heart would leap, thinking it might be news of Cooper. But it was always something else. A neighbor offering to help search. Her mother calling from Florida, worried. The local newspaper wanting an interview. Tom took time off work. He organized search parties with people from their church, from Emma's school, from the neighborhood. 20 volunteers walked the streets in grid patterns, calling Cooper's name, shaking treat bags, listening for any bark or whimper. They checked ditches and drainage pipes. They searched the woods behind the elementary school and the industrial park near the highway. They walked the trails along Miller Creek, where Cooper used to love to swim. Every golden-colored dog they spotted sent their hearts racing, only to realize it was not him. Sarah created a Facebook post that was shared thousands of times. Local news picked up the story. "Family searches for dog who dug his way out of grave," read the headline. The segment aired on the evening news, showing footage of the empty grave and Emma's tearful face. Some people sent messages of support and prayers. Others sent messages questioning their sanity, suggesting they had staged the whole thing for attention. A few sent cruel jokes about zombie dogs and pet cemetery. The comment section of every social media post became a battlefield. Supporters argued with skeptics. Animal lovers shared their own miracle dog stories. Trolls mocked and ridiculed. Sarah stopped reading the comments. But there was no sign of Cooper. No credible sightings. No leads that went anywhere. The shelters promised to keep an eye out. The animal control officers added Cooper to their watch list. But as one officer gently reminded them, a dog that injured and disoriented might not survive long on his own. Especially not in October, with temperatures dropping at night. Emma stopped eating. She barely slept. She spent hours sitting in the backyard, staring at the empty grave, waiting. Sarah would find her there at dawn, dew soaking through her pajamas, eyes fixed on the hole in the fence where Cooper had escaped. "What if he's trying to come home but he's lost?" Emma asked on the second night. "What if he can't remember where we are?" Tom knelt beside his daughter, pulling her into his arms. "Cooper knows where home is, sweetheart. He's the smartest dog I've ever known. If he can make it back, he will. But what if he's hurt? What if he's hungry?" Tom had no answer for that. They all knew Cooper might be suffering, might be dying alone somewhere. The thought was unbearable. Sarah organized a midnight search party, driving slowly through sleeping neighborhoods with spotlights, stopping at every park and vacant lot. Tom stayed home with Emma, who refused to go to bed until her mother returned. On the third night after the discovery, Sarah found her daughter asleep on the back porch, wrapped in an old jacket of Tom's, Cooper's water bowl clutched to her chest. Emma had filled it with fresh water, as if preparing for his return. "We can't give up, Mom," Emma mumbled as Sarah carried her inside. "He came back for a reason. He needs us." Sarah tucked Emma into bed and sat beside her, smoothing her daughter's hair. "We won't give up," she promised. But the words felt hollow. Where could they possibly look that they had not already searched? As she left Emma's room, Sarah passed Cooper's food bowls in the kitchen. She had not moved them, had not put away his leash or his bed. Part of her wondered if she ever would. Tom found her standing in the kitchen at 2 a.m, staring at those bowls. "We should try to get some sleep," he said gently. "What if he's out there right now?" Sarah whispered. "What if he's cold and scared and trying to find his way home, and we're in here sleeping?" Tom wrapped his arms around his wife. "We've done everything we can, Sarah. We've searched everywhere. We've called everyone. If he's out there, if he can come home, he will." But as the days stretched on, hope began to fade. The volunteers stopped calling. The news moved on to other stories. The social media posts stopped being shared. On the 4th day, Officer Rodriguez came by the house. His expression told them everything before he said a word. "There's been no sightings," he said. "I'm sorry. At this point, statistically, the chances of finding him alive are—" "Don't," Sarah said sharply. "Don't say it." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I understand. We'll keep the alert active. But Mrs. Mitchell, you might want to start preparing yourselves for the possibility that—" "He's alive," Emma said from the doorway. None of them had heard her come down the stairs. "I know he's alive. I can feel it." Rodriguez looked at the little girl with sympathy and sadness. "I hope you're right," he said quietly. After he left, the house fell into a heavy silence. The kind of silence that comes when there is nothing left to say, nothing left to do but wait. Cooper's memories were fragmented and confused. He remembered darkness. Terrible, suffocating darkness. The weight of earth pressing down on all sides. Panic surging through his body, his lungs screaming for air that would not come. He had clawed upward through the soil, driven by pure instinct. Up, up, up. Until finally, miraculously, his paw broke through into cold night air. He had dragged himself out of the hole, collapsing on the wet grass, gasping and shaking. Mr. Squeaky had come out with him, caught in his collar. The rubber ball was a familiar anchor in a world that had gone terrifyingly wrong. But something else had emerged with Cooper from that grave. A knowledge he could not name. A sense of urgency that pushed him to his feet despite his weakness. Images flashed through his mind. Not his own memories. Something else. A small face, tear-streaked and terrified. A dark room. The smell of fear and desperation. He needed to move, needed to go somewhere. The pull was magnetic, irresistible. Cooper had shaken the dirt from his fur and run, through the hole in the fence, across the neighbor's yard, down streets he knew and streets he did not. The rain had washed away some of the grave dirt, but not the confusion or the driving need that propelled him forward. He ran through the night and into the dawn. His body protested with every step. Muscles that had been still for too long cramped and seized. His paws, soft from days without use, split and bled on the rough pavement. Hunger gnawed at his belly with teeth sharper than any predator. But he could not stop. The city was a labyrinth of sounds and smells that overwhelmed his senses. Car horns blared, sirens wailed in the distance, the acrid smell of exhaust and garbage mixed with the scents of cooking food that made his stomach twist with desperate need. On the first day, he passed a restaurant where workers were unloading supplies. A box of chicken sat unguarded near the back door. Cooper's legs nearly gave out at the smell. His mouth watered, his stomach cramped with hunger so intense it felt like dying. But when he moved toward the food, The pull inside him grew painful. Wrong direction. Keep moving. Someone needs you. He left the chicken and ran. That night, he curled up under a highway overpass, shivering in the cold. Other homeless dogs watched him from the shadows. A large German shepherd mix approached, growling a warning to stay away from his territory. Cooper did not have the strength to fight. He simply picked up Mr. Squeaky in his mouth and moved to a different spot, further from the pack. Sleep came in fits and starts. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that child's face. Heard crying that was not there. Smelled fear that made his hackles rise even in his exhaustion. On the second day, a woman in a blue sedan tried to coax him into her car with pieces of hamburger. She was kind-faced and gentle-voiced. She called him "sweet boy" and told him she would take him somewhere safe. Cooper's stomach screamed at him to take the food. His legs trembled so badly he could barely stand. Every instinct told him to accept the help, to rest, to eat. But the pull grew stronger, not weaker. The image in his mind sharpened. A warehouse, broken windows, a small room in the back. The child was there, waiting, dying. Cooper backed away from the woman and her hamburger. She called after him, but he was already running. His vision blurred. The world tilted and swayed. He stumbled, fell, dragged himself back to his feet. Blood left paw prints on the sidewalk. His ribs showed through his matted fur. But he kept moving. By the third day, his strength was failing. He had not eaten, had barely drunk from puddles and streams. His legs trembled with each step. Twice he collapsed, only to force himself up again. The pull inside him was no longer a gentle tug. It was a scream, an emergency siren blaring in his mind. Hurry! Hurry! Time is running out. He crossed busy intersections without looking, somehow avoiding the cars that swerved and honked around him. He cut through yards where dogs barked threats from behind fences. He swam across a creek when a bridge was too far out of his way. And then, late in the afternoon of that third day, Cooper smelled something that cut through his exhaustion like lightning. Smoke. And beneath the smoke, something that made his hackles rise and his lips pull back from his teeth. Fear. Human fear. Child fear. The same smell from the images that had been haunting him since he clawed his way out of the grave. Cooper's head snapped toward the scent. He forgot his exhaustion, forgot his bleeding paws and empty stomach. Every instinct, every fiber of his being aligned toward a single purpose. Find the child. Save the child. He ran. Faster than he had run in days, faster than his broken body should have allowed. The warehouse loomed ahead, gray and menacing against the darkening sky. Cooper did not hesitate. He found an opening where a board had fallen away from a window and squeezed through, ignoring the scrape of rusty nails against his sides. Inside, the smell was overwhelming. Mold and rot and old machinery, and underneath it all, that child scent, thick with terror. Cooper followed it through darkened hallways, past rooms filled with debris. His claws clicked on concrete. His breath came in harsh gasps. But he was close now. So close. He found the door, solid wood, locked. On the other side, he could hear breathing, fast and shallow. The child was there. Cooper threw himself against the door. Once. Twice. Pain exploded through his shoulder, but the door did not budge. He backed up, gathered what remained of his strength, and hit it again. The wood splintered. The lock gave. The door crashed inward. And there, huddled in the corner, was the boy from his visions. The old warehouse had been scheduled for demolition for 2 years. Broken windows gaped like empty eye sockets. Graffiti covered the brick walls. No trespassing signs hung crooked on the rusted chain-link fence. Inside, In a back room stacked with rotting boxes and discarded machinery, 7-year-old Michael Chen huddled in the corner. He had been missing for 36 hours. Michael had been playing in his front yard when a man had approached him, asking for help finding a lost puppy. Michael's mother had told him never to talk to strangers, but the man seemed so worried about the puppy. He said it was just around the corner. Would Michael help him look? By the time Michael realized his mistake, he was in a car driving away from his neighborhood. By the time he started to cry and begged to go home, they were at the warehouse. The man had left him locked in the room with a bottle of water and a stale sandwich. "I'll be back," he had said. "Don't make noise or it'll be worse for you." That had been yesterday morning, or the day before. Michael had lost track of time. The water was gone. The sandwich made him sick, and he was so scared he could barely breathe. He had tried the door 100 times, tried the boarded window, tried shouting for help until his voice went hoarse. No one came. No one heard. Michael curled tighter in the corner, clutching his knees to his chest. He thought about his mom, his dad, his little sister. Would he ever see them again? Then he heard it. A sound outside the room. Not the man's heavy footsteps, something else. Scratching. And then a low, rumbling growl. Michael's heart hammered in his chest. What if it was a rat? Or something worse? The door shuddered. Something hit it hard from the outside. Once, twice, 3 times. Michael scrambled backward, pressing himself against the wall. Tears streamed down his face. The door burst inward, wood splintering around the lock. And through the opening came a dog, a big golden retriever, covered in dirt and blood, with wild eyes and bared teeth. In his mouth, impossibly, he carried a rubber ball. Michael stopped breathing. The dog stepped into the room. His eyes swept across the space and locked onto Michael. For a moment, neither moved. Then Cooper dropped Mr. Squeaky and moved toward the boy. Not with aggression, with purpose. He pushed his nose against Michael's arm, sniffing, assessing. Then he turned and looked back at the broken door. Cooper barked. Once. Loud and sharp. Then he returned to Michael and gently, carefully, took hold of the boy's jacket sleeve with his teeth. He tugged. Michael understood. The dog wanted him to move. "I can't," Michael whispered. His legs were stiff from sitting so long. His whole body shook. "I'm too scared." Cooper released the sleeve and pressed his body against Michael's side. The weight was warm and solid. Real. The dog looked up at him with brown eyes that somehow seemed to say, "I know you're scared, but we have to go now." Michael reached out with trembling fingers and touched Cooper's head. The fur was matted with dirt and blood, but beneath it, the dog was warm and alive. "Okay," Michael whispered. "Okay." He pushed himself to his feet, using Cooper for balance. His legs felt like rubber, but they held. Cooper moved toward the door, and Michael followed, one hand resting on the dog's back. They made it down a dark hallway, past rooms filled with debris and shadows. Cooper moved with confidence, as if he knew exactly where he was going. He paused at corners, ears forward, listening. When he determined the coast was clear, he pushed forward. They reached a side exit. The door stood ajar, and beyond it, Michael could see daylight. Real daylight. Freedom. Cooper nosed the door wider and stepped out. Michael followed, blinking in the late afternoon sun. They were at the back of the warehouse, facing a wooded area. Cooper started toward the trees, but then he stopped. His whole body went rigid. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Michael heard it too. A car. Coming closer. The man was coming back. Cooper's growl deepened. He positioned himself between Michael and the sound of the approaching vehicle. His lips pulled back from his teeth. Every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. "Run," Michael whispered. "Please, we have to run." But Cooper did not run. He held his ground as a black SUV pulled around the corner of the building. The vehicle stopped. The door opened. The man who had taken Michael stepped out. He was tall and thin, with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. When he saw Michael and the dog, his expression twisted into rage. "You little brat," he snarled, reaching into his jacket. Cooper lunged. He moved like lightning, closing the distance before the man could fully react. Cooper's teeth sank into the man's arm, just below the wrist. The man screamed and dropped whatever he had been reaching for. It clattered to the pavement. A knife. Cooper released the arm and attacked again, going for the leg this time. The man tried to kick him away, but Cooper was everywhere at once, biting, releasing, attacking from a new angle. Years of playing fetch had made him fast. Years of protecting Emma had made him fierce. "Help!" the man shouted, stumbling backward. "Someone help!" Michael stood frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. The gentle dog who had led him out of the warehouse had transformed into something terrifying and magnificent. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Cooper heard them and seemed to understand. He made one final lunge, driving the man backward. The man tripped over his own feet and went down hard. His head cracked against the pavement. He did not get back up. Cooper returned to Michael, sides heaving, blood on his muzzle. He picked up Mr. Squeaky from where he had dropped it at the warehouse exit and moved to Michael's side. 2 police cars screamed into the parking lot, followed by an ambulance. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Michael raised his hands, tears streaming down his face. "He saved me," he shouted. "The dog saved me." Detective Sarah Reeves had been on the Michael Chen case since the boy disappeared. She had not slept more than a few hours in the past 2 days. Every lead had gone nowhere. Every tip turned cold. She had started to fear the worst. When the call came in about a disturbance at the old Westfield warehouse, she had not expected it to be related. But she responded anyway, because that's what you did when a child was missing. You followed every thread. She arrived 10 minutes after the initial responders. By then, the suspect was in custody, injured but conscious. The boy was wrapped in a blanket in the back of an ambulance, being checked by paramedics. And sitting beside the ambulance, surrounded by 3 police officers who seemed unsure what to do with him, was a large golden retriever, covered in dirt and blood, clutching a rubber ball in his mouth. "We need to get that dog to a vet," Reeves said, approaching. "He's clearly injured." "Ma'am," one of the officers said, "the boy says the dog broke down the door, says the dog fought off the suspect, says the dog led him out of the building." Reeves looked at the dog more closely. There was something in his eyes. Intelligence, purpose, and exhaustion so profound it was a wonder he was still standing. "Has anyone checked for a microchip?" she asked. An officer ran a scanner over the dog's shoulder. It beeped. "Got a hit," the officer said. "Registered to Sarah and Tom Mitchell. Address in Riverside Heights." Reeves felt something click in her memory. Wait, Mitchell? Isn't that the family with the buried dog? The one that went missing from its grave? The officer pulled up something on his phone. "Yeah. Missing dog named Cooper. Golden retriever. Disappeared 3 days ago from his own burial site." Reeves stared at the dog. At Cooper. "That's impossible." Cooper tilted his head slightly, as if to say, "And yet?" Sarah Mitchell was folding laundry when her phone rang. She had been folding the same shirt for 5 minutes, unable to focus on anything. It had been a week since they discovered the empty grave. 7 days of searching. 7 days of hoping. 7 days of watching Emma's light dim a little more each day. The number on her screen was unfamiliar. She almost did not answer. but something made her thumb hit the green button. "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes." "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Detective Sarah Reeves with the Metro Police Department. I need you to listen carefully. Is your dog's name Cooper, a golden retriever?" Sarah's heart stopped. "Yes. Have you found him? Is he?" "He's alive, Mrs. Mitchell. He's injured and exhausted, but he's alive. And Mrs. Mitchell, he saved a child's life today." The words did not make sense. Sarah sat down hard on the couch, the laundry forgotten. "What?" "I need you to come to Mercy General Hospital. I'll explain everything when you get here." Sarah drove through red lights and stop signs. She barely remembered the journey. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Tom met her in the hospital parking lot, Emma in his arms. They had both gotten the same call. Tom's face was pale, his eyes red. He had been crying. "Is it really him?" Tom asked, his voice breaking. "I don't know," Sarah said. "I don't know, but we have to go see." Emma had not said a word since they got the call. She clutched her father's neck, her small body rigid with hope and fear. Detective Reeves met them at the entrance and led them through a maze of hallways to a small courtyard behind the emergency wing. With each step, Sarah's heart pounded harder. What if it was not Cooper? What if it was some other dog and they had made a mistake? What if it was Cooper but he did not remember them? What if he was dying? They turned the final corner, and Sarah saw him. Cooper lay on a blanket in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by 3 veterinary staff members who were checking his wounds and hooking him up to an IV. His golden fur was matted with dirt and blood. His ribs showed through his sides. He looked like he had been through a war, but he was alive. Emma screamed his name and broke free from Tom's arms. She ran across the courtyard, her shoes slapping against the pavement. The veterinary staff started to stop her, to warn her to be gentle, but Cooper's reaction made them step back. His head lifted. His ears perked forward. His tail, which had been lying still, began to thump against the ground. Not just a weak flutter, a real wag, strong and steady. Emma dropped to her knees beside him and threw her arms around his neck, sobbing. "Cooper, Cooper, Cooper." Cooper whined, a sound so full of emotion it barely sounded canine. He licked her face, her hands, anywhere he could reach. His whole body trembled. Sarah fell to her knees on Cooper's other side, her hands shaking as she touched his head, his back, making sure he was real. Oh my God, you're alive. You're really alive." Tom stood behind them, tears streaming down his face. He placed his hand on Cooper's side, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing, the steady beat of his heart. Mr. Squeaky sat beside Cooper, worn and muddy but intact. Emma picked it up and squeezed it. It gave a faint squeak, and Cooper's tail wagged harder. "I don't understand," Sarah managed to say through her tears. "How is this possible?" Detective Reeves knelt beside them. She had interviewed hundreds of victims and witnesses over her career. She had seen people reunited with stolen property, with lost loved ones. But she had never seen anything quite like this. "Mrs. Mitchell," she began, then had to stop and clear her throat. The scene was affecting even her. "We don't have all the answers, but here's what we know." She told them about Cooper's impossible journey, about the medical episode that had mimicked death, about him digging his way out of the grave, about 30 miles traveled on bleeding paws, starving and exhausted. "We've been tracing his route," Reeves continued. "There was a restaurant owner who saw him near the highway, said the dog looked at food they had left out but then ran off. A homeless man under the interstate said Cooper spent a night there but left at dawn. A woman tried to catch him to help him, but he ran from her too." "Why?" Tom asked. "Why would he run from help?" Reeves gestured to a uniformed officer standing nearby. He brought over a tablet and showed them a photo. A 7-year-old boy with tear-stained cheeks and frightened eyes. "This is Michael Chen," Reeves said. "He's been missing since yesterday morning, kidnapped from his front yard. We had no leads, no witnesses, no idea where to look. Until 30 minutes ago, when Cooper broke down a locked door in the Westfield warehouse and found him." Sarah stared at the photo, then at Cooper. "That's impossible." "And yet," Reeves said quietly, she told them the rest. About Cooper fighting off the kidnapper, about him protecting Michael until police arrived, about the rubber ball he never let go of, not even in the midst of combat. "The vet who first examined him when we brought him in said she's never seen anything like it," Reeves continued. "He should have died. The distance he traveled, his condition, the injuries, the starvation. By every metric, he should have collapsed miles ago. But something kept him moving. Something drove him to that warehouse. One of the veterinarians, Dr. Patel, knelt beside them. She was a young woman with kind eyes and gentle hands that moved confidently over Cooper's body. "Dogs have senses we don't fully understand," Dr. Patel said softly. "Some can detect seizures before they happen. Some can smell cancer. Some seem to know when their owners are sick or in distress from miles away. The bond between dogs and humans creates connections that science can't fully explain." She stroked Cooper's head gently, and he leaned into her touch. "It's possible Cooper sensed that boy's distress, sensed he was in danger, and his instinct to protect and rescue kicked in." She paused, looking at Emma, who still had her arms around Cooper's neck. "Or maybe he just knew someone needed him, the same way he always knew when your daughter needed him." "But 30 miles, Tom said. "How did he know where to go?" Dr. Patel smiled. "That's the mystery, isn't it? Dogs have been documented traveling hundreds of miles to find their way home. They have a sense of direction, a connection to magnetic fields that we're only beginning to understand. Maybe Cooper didn't know where he was going. Maybe he just followed instinct, followed the scent of fear on the wind, followed something we can't measure or quantify." Emma had her face buried in Cooper's fur, her tears soaking into his matted coat. "You came back," she whispered. "You came back for me." But as Sarah watched her daughter and their miracle dog, she wondered if Emma had it backward. Cooper's eyes were closed now, his breathing steady and deep. But even in his exhaustion, one paw rested against Emma's leg, anchoring, protecting. Even now. Maybe Cooper had come back for all of them. But first, he had someone else to save. The Chen family arrived 20 minutes later. Michael's mother, Lynn, was a small woman with graying hair and eyes swollen from crying. His father, David, was tall and quiet, his arm around his wife's shoulders. Michael walked between them, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm day, holding tight to both their hands. When Michael saw Cooper, he broke away from his parents and ran to him. He dropped to his knees beside Emma, and for a moment the two children just looked at each other. Then Michael reached out and placed his hand on Cooper's head. "Thank you," Michael whispered. "Thank you for finding me." Cooper opened his eyes and looked at the boy. Recognition flashed between them, a bond forged in darkness and fear, sealed with courage and hope. Lin Chen knelt beside her son, tears streaming down her face. She reached out a trembling hand and touched Cooper's side. "You saved my baby," she said, her voice breaking. "You saved my son." David Chen stood behind his family, his jaw clenched tight, fighting for control. "We owe you everything," he said to the Mitchell family. "Your dog gave us back our child. How can we ever thank you?" "He's not ours," Emma said quietly. Everyone looked at her. "Cooper doesn't belong to anyone. He belongs to everyone who needs him." The adults exchanged glances, but the children understood. Michael nodded solemnly. The story made national news. "Miracle Dog rises from grave to save missing child," read the headlines. The Mitchell family gave one carefully controlled interview, then retreated from the spotlight. They did not want fame. They just wanted their dog home. Cooper spent 3 days in the animal hospital, being treated for dehydration, malnutrition, and the various injuries he had sustained during his journey. The Chens visited him every day, bringing toys and treats. 7-year-old Michael sat beside Cooper's kennel for hours, reading him stories and telling him about his family. "My mom says you're an angel," Michael told Cooper on the 2nd day. "She says God sent you to find me." Cooper's tail thumped against the kennel floor. Mr. Squeaky sat beside him, freshly washed by the vet staff. On the day Cooper came home, the entire neighborhood lined the Mitchell's street. There were signs and balloons and cheers. Emma rode in the back seat with Cooper, her hand resting on his head the entire way. That night, after the excitement died down and the visitors left, the family sat together in the living room. Cooper lay on his dog bed by the fireplace, Emma curled up beside him. "What do you think it was?" Tom asked quietly. "That made him run? That led him to that warehouse?" Sarah stroked Cooper's fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "I don't know. Maybe we'll never know." "I know," Emma said softly. They looked at her. "He could feel that boy was scared, the same way he always knows when I'm scared. And he did what he always does. He helped." Sarah smiled through fresh tears. "Yeah, he did." Cooper sighed deeply and closed his eyes. Mr. Squeaky rested under his chin. For the first time in a week, he looked peaceful. Outside, the October moon hung full and bright in a clear sky. The backyard grave had been filled in, the disturbed earth smoothed over. Sarah had planted wildflowers there, creating a small memorial garden. Not for a lost dog, but for a miracle. Cooper would live another 4 years, long enough to see Emma graduate from middle school, long enough to greet her at the door every day with his tail wagging and Mr. Squeaky in his mouth. He would grow gray around his muzzle and slow in his movements, but the light in his eyes never dimmed. Michael Chen would visit once a month, every month until the end. On Cooper's last day, when age finally caught up with him and his heart grew too tired to beat, Michael was there, holding his hand while Emma held the other. "Thank you," Michael whispered, tears on his face. "Thank you for coming back. Thank you for finding me." Cooper's tail moved once, weakly. His eyes found Emma's, and in that look was everything he had always been: protector, friend, hero. When they buried him the 2nd time, they did it properly. The vet confirmed his passing. They waited 3 days before the burial, making absolutely certain. But this time, they did not bury him in their backyard. They buried him in the pet section of Riverside Cemetery, where the grass was green and well tended, where flowers bloomed year-round. His headstone was simple granite with words that Michael had chosen. Cooper, beloved friend. He came back when someone needed him, and beside those words, etched into the stone, was the image of a dog carrying a rubber ball, running toward the light. Emma placed Mr. Squeaky on the grave, but this time she did not leave it there. She picked it up again and held it close. "He'd want you to keep it," Michael said quietly. Emma nodded. "Yeah, he would." Because that was the thing about Cooper. He had never really been about the toy. He had been about love, about loyalty, about the unbreakable bond between a dog and the people who needed him. And in the end, when it mattered most, he had come back from the darkness itself to prove it. As the Mitchell family walked away from the grave that day, Sarah looked back once. The October sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the cemetery. And for just a moment, she could have sworn she saw him. Cooper, running through the light, free, whole, happy, still protecting, still loving, still their miracle. The wind rustled the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Emma squeezed Mr. Squeaky. It gave one last, faint squeak, and she smiled through her tears. "Goodbye, Cooper," she whispered. But it was not really goodbye, because the best dogs never truly leave. They live on in the memories they create, the lives they touch, and the love they leave behind. Cooper had done all three. And his story, the story of the dog who came back from the grave to save a child, would be told for generations. A reminder that love is stronger than death, that courage comes in all forms, and that sometimes miracles have 4 legs and a rubber ball.